Coming off of the win versus Slovan Bratislava in the Champions League, there were a lot of question marks defensively on how Milan would cope in this game versus Empoli. And this would definitely be our best lineup going forward. And the only change that we would see from the Juventus match would be Loftus-Cheek coming out and Christian Pulisic coming back in and playing that number 10 role. And with a comfortable routine win, we took our chance as well when it mattered most. And with Morata with a well-timed, experienced goal, volley of top-class ability, we also saw Tijani Reijnders show his ability and confirms what we knew about his quality. And I want to give a shout out to Reijnders, and also I want to give a special shout out to myself, because in the earlier season prediction video, I predicted that Reijnders would be our most important player of the season, and he's coming to his own, and he's being a real figure in this team, and he's one of the first names on the team sheet. And we saw guys like Thiaw and we saw guys like Thiaw and Pulisic were players to kind of get us off of our seat, and now we're seeing Reijnders play that game of his own. He's one of those players where he's kind of unpredictable, but to the point where that quality is so important to have, that unpredictability about Reijnders. And we saw in the second goal that he showcased his ball carrying ability, and it was just class how he was able to just dribble through and not really have pressure on him at all. And it was a well-timed finish as well. And of course, the first goal was a thing of beauty, a volley. But speaking of important players, Pulisic was one that I wasn't really entirely impressed with, because there were at times where I feel like he should have been a little bit less selfish and maybe lay off the ball to a teammate or two. But instead, he kind of was a bit selfish and wanted to go for his own. I'm not upset, because I think Pulisic has the right to kind of do that, because he is one of the most consistent players on the team. I will say what I was impressed with was the defense. Thiaw and Gabbia have to be the defensive pairing going forward. We saw in the previous match, it was Pavlovic and Tomori, and that was a complete mess, complete shit show, even though Pavlovic had one of those goal line clearances. But I wasn't impressed with it whatsoever. And I think it was a part of that high line that we were playing versus Slovan Bratislava. But in this game, Thiaw and Gabbia were solid. And I want to talk about Thiaw for a little bit, because a couple games ago, I feel like Thiaw was probably on the bottom of the totem pole in terms of this center back pecking order. And he's fought for his spot similarly to what Gabbia did all those months ago when he was coming back from loan. He had a point to prove, and now Gabbia is our best center back. And not only that, he is confirmed for a contract renewal, which is great till 2029. And I feel like Thiaw is kind of fighting for that spot similarly to what Gabbia did all those months ago. So I want to tip my hat to Thiaw, and I just wanted to give my flowers to him as well. Another player I wanted to give my flowers to is, surprisingly, Emerson Royal. This was hands down Emerson Royal's best game in a Milan shirt. I feel like he was doing all the right things. He was even being a force to be reckoned with, even going forward, being sometimes an inverted fullback, but also making those runs down the line. So I just wanted to give my flowers to Emerson. And I know in the previous episode or a couple episodes back, I was heavily criticizing Emerson, but look how easy it is to back a player when he does all the right things. And of course, I think a lot of it was because of Musa being in this lineup, and we'll get to how the lineup was. And this lineup for sure gets the best out of players. With Musa being in there, I think it makes us a lot more balanced and a lot more defensively solid, because you kind of get that insurance net of Musa being there, and kind of having Emerson knowingly that he's probably going to mess up. You have a nice little insurance with Musa there. So I think that was really good. And what I really liked about this lineup as well, which was a 4-3-3, we saw a midfield of Musa, Reijnders, and Fofana. And Fofana in this game was an absolute beast in this game, just being a defensive presence in that midfield, allowing Reijnders to go forward. And clearly this was not only Reijnders' best match, but we saw that with Fofana making these kind of sacrifices, and Reijnders knowing that Fofana is going to be back there, he has a lot more comfortability to go forward. So Fofana in this game really brought the best out of a lot of players going forward, and coming back off of probably another back-to-back great performance versus Slovan Bratislava. He got that great assist to Thiaw, and now in this game, just a defensive masterclass in this game. Ball-winning midfield, even slinging some passes that were pretty good as well. So I wanted to tip my hat to Fofana as well after getting a lot of criticism from a lot of fans. People were criticizing Fofana, but now he and Reijnders have built a midfield partnership that is very good, and it's going to be very hard for Benacer to come back into this lineup, because at the moment I like Fofana, Reijnders, and Musa. I feel like it gives us the most balance. I feel like it has the most quality, and I feel like these three are the ones to build upon going forward. I feel like Benacer, he had his time. I love Isma. Isma was one of my favorite Milan players, but of course injuries were the ones that made him fall, unfortunately. And I feel like going forward, why fix what's not broken in this midfield? Musa, Fofana, and Reijnders going forward. And I'm also going to give my flowers to Fonseca, because I know in the Slovan Bratislava preview in the last video, I said if it was not a win, he's gone. And by the skin of our teeth, kind of, we won versus Slovan Bratislava. So I wanted to give my flowers to Fonseca because he got this one right. And I think you're starting to see some good things that we took away from the Juventus game, which was our defensive abilities. And we kind of attached the offensive side of our game from the Slovan Bratislava match in this one. So if we can kind of keep this system that we played versus Empoli, defensively strong and offensively efficient, I think is the word to kind of go forward in this match. Offensively, we were taking our chances well. Leao was a threat all game. Pulisic was kind of getting forward at times. Of course, like I mentioned previously, he should have maybe laid it off to a teammate or two. But regardless of the fact is, offensively, we were very good this game, and we were efficient, and we took our chances well. So I'm hoping in the next game that we stay consistent, and this result versus Empoli won't mean anything if we don't get a positive result in our next match. So let's go to tops and flops for this game. Top for me, it's between a couple players. I think Reijnders is of course an obvious pick, but I think for this one I'm gonna say Fofana, because I liked how Fofana was kind of like playing a Kessie role, but a lot more defensive as well, because we know his capabilities, and I feel like with him being back, like I said earlier, it allows Reijnders to have that comfortability to go forward and attack and just do whatever, be creative, and link up play with Leao and Theo. And, you know, you saw a little bit of that in this game. So I think man of the match for me, I'm going to say Fofana. But honorable mention, Emerson Royal. I really liked Emerson in this game, and I hope he keeps it up in games to come. Now, flop for me, it's going to be a little harsh just because he is our best player of the season, most likely. Definitely our most consistent player of the season. I didn't say Pulisic. I was a little disappointed that maybe he was a little too selfish. However, I didn't love how he played, but I didn't hate how he played. I think he was just the worst out of the best bunch. Going into our next match versus Sassuolo in the Coppa Italia, we're going to play an absolute B team. I'm expecting maybe a Camarda start. I think we're going to see like Sportiello and a couple of the other, you know, bench guys, Tereciano and co. So I'm not really expecting much in this game, but I'm definitely expecting a win from a Serie B Sassuolo team that is in first place, but that shouldn't even matter at the point where the quality is. So I'm expecting a win. Granted, we're going to play an absolute B team. I'm going to say maybe a 2-1. I definitely think we're going to win, but I think it's going to be a little tough just because Sassuolo have always been our bogey team, right? All those countless memories of Berardi just, you know, cutting in and shooting on his left. And, you know, I know that one Scamacca goal that, you know, haunts us all, but I'm expecting a win here just because that is a Sassuolo of the old. And now we're looking at a Sassuolo of the new in Serie B and so on and so forth. So I think we're going to win, and I'm going to predict a 2-1. Now the big boy game versus Atalanta. And this one is huge for our season going forward, because I think with a lot of points that were dropped this weekend for Serie A, Juventus dropped points. They tied versus Lecce. Shout out to Ante Rebic, who is an absolute beast versus Juventus. And we also saw Lazio drop points as well, which is huge as well. So going for Atalanta on Friday, it's a big game here, and we are away for this one, and it's going to be tough because Atalanta coming off of a 2-0 win versus Roma. And obviously, of course, they're one of the best offensive teams. Our defense is really going to be tested here. So I think I would much rather have saw us play how we did versus Juventus against Atalanta. Just be a lot solid, maybe hit them on the counterattack or something like that. But strangely enough, I'm gonna predict a draw here. I think it's gonna be a 1-1. I think we are gonna take points, which I think is the most important thing. Of course, against Juventus, it was a completely different scenario because this Juventus team was riddled with injuries. So I feel like to take a draw away is almost like dropping points essentially. Against Atalanta, who are probably one of the best teams in Serie A, if not the best, offensively as well, our defense is going to be tested here. And I think this is going to be a tough match, going to be a gritty match for sure. So I'm going to predict a draw in this one. I'm going to predict a 1-1, and I think Leao is going to score a goal. So I just wanted to briefly look at the Serie A table right now. Milan sit in 7th place. We haven't changed, but we go from 6 points behind Juventus to now 4. And I think this game versus Atalanta is huge because this can potentially get us closer to Juventus, the team that are above us. And of course, Lazio dropped points as well. So now we're only 6 points behind Lazio. So there's a lot to play for in this Atalanta match. And in our next couple games, we're playing Genoa, Hellas Verona, Roma, and I think Como at one point as well. So it's like those strings of games, and especially how poor Roma is. I'm looking at the table. Roma are 15th, Genoa are 14th, and Hellas Verona and Como are 17th and 18th respectively. So this next couple string of games are super crucial to the end of the year. And if we can end the year on a good note and somewhat closer to that top 4, then I think our suspicions and our critical comments about Fonseca and this Milan team will, I think, get a lot lighter. And I know I put Fonseca on the hot seat in the last video. I said if he does not win versus Slovan, then we're out. And I said that Champions League was probably the only takeaway that we can have for the season. However, the main thing is we play great against the big teams, but then we struggle to put our quality out there versus the small teams because either we play too safe or we just do not take our chances well. And of course, that game versus Cagliari, I think, is the perfect example of that. You can tie against Cagliari, score 3 goals, and that's still not enough to win the game. And against Empoli, you saw that we just swept them aside, and we're like, all right, who's next? These next couple games are going to be super important, but I caution that even though this was a great performance versus Empoli, there still has to be an expectation on this team to continue this form and stay consistent. Because that was a great performance versus Empoli, but it won't mean anything if we don't grab a result versus Atalanta. I think that'll do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and get involved in the comment section below. What do you guys think about the Empoli game? What do you guys think of our chances in the Coppa Italia versus Sassuolo? And what do you guys think is going to happen versus Atalanta this Friday? So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao, ragazzi.